ceiling painting.
Yeah.
And there's a painting on the ceiling, you see.
Yeah.
And my idea was for people to climb up a long, long ladder, just go on climbing up like this, you know. And
I walked up this ladder, and I picked up a spike. I feel balance in there, and I see two little writing. It just said yes.
And that's the first piece he saw.
Yeah.
And he says now that if that said no instead of yes, you know, he wouldn't bother to see the show anymore.
Well, most of the art those days was art that put everybody down, you know, like makes people upset. So I was anti-art because I'd been 5 years in art school, and they're all phonies, you know, and I really was against it. But because it was positive, it said yes. I thought, okay, it's the first show I've been to that said something, you know, warm to me.
And then he came downstairs, and I was there, and then the gallery owner just told me, you know, this man wants to hammer a nail in your hammer nailing piece.
And she says, no, because it wasn't the opening. She wanted to keep a nice clean board for the next day.
I didn't want him to do it because it was so white and so beautiful. And it was still a virgin painting. You see, nobody hammered a nail in yet, you see.
Oh, she says, okay, well, give me 5 shillings then to hammer a nail in. That's about $1, you know, more than $1.
I decided to charge, you know.
So I said, listen, I'll give you an imaginary 5 shillings in and hammer an imaginary nail in. Is that okay?
And I thought, oh, that's beautiful, beautiful idea. And all my instructions were becoming, my painting and sculpture instructions were becoming imaginary, you know.
Yeah.
Yes. So I thought, oh, this is another person who thinks like me, you know, in that sense.
Well, she came from a Japanese upper-middle-class family. Her parents were bankers and all that jazz. Very straight. They were trying to get her off with an ambassador when she was about 18. You know, now's the time. I come from a upper working-class family in Liverpool, the other end of the world. We met, but our minds were so similar. Our ideas were so similar. It was incredible that we could be so alike from different environments.
That Yoko met in 1966 was a pop king, but he sat uneasily on his throne.
Well, it's been lots of fun.
Lennon, with his restless energy and seditious humor, was determined to branch out. And in Yoko Ono, he found a source of inspiration, someone who did things even John Lennon had not dared. Both were married at the time. They simmered as friends for 2 years. Romance officially began when he invited her over to make some experimental music and this far-out film, which would show the world just what kindred spirits they really were.
We show each other's loneliness. The degree and the measure of pain seem to be very similar. And we just immediately sort of turned into each other because of that problem.
Lennon's childhood, like Yoko's, was shaped by loneliness. Abandoned by both his father and mother at an early age, John was raised by his Aunt Mimi. His mother, Julia, later re-entered his life, but died soon after in a car crash.
The degree of insecurity in John was tremendous. And then we met, and we found out the depth of loneliness we had, you know, because both of us were sort of living in a different time from other people. And it was like sort of holding hands and saying, I'm so glad we met, you know. Yes, I mean, I was going through the same thing. Isn't that terrible? And nobody understands us, you know. It was like that. So together, we were misunderstood. This time it was together, though, you know.
Lennon would say that Yoko simply gave him the freedom to be himself. She awoke in him the stirrings of the artist he had once wanted to be in Liverpool, and encouraged him to give a show of his own works at a London gallery in 1968. Dedicated to Yoko, the exhibit displayed the whimsical side of his nature and marked the beginning of a long artistic collaboration. In 1971, they made a film called Imagine. The title came from one of Yoko's poems. Imagine was an innovative forerunner of today's rock music videos.
Wake up in the morning.
my hands caught in fear. Midst of manure, my heart shakes in terror. My heart, my hands, my legs, my...
Imagine was part promo film, part portrait, and part parody of their own legend. Their albums intended to provoke thought, but often perplexed the world. Banned in America, Two Virgins was their statement about openness, but the world found their frankness hard to bear. When Yoko miscarried their child, the pair found some solace in releasing a record of the fetus's last heartbeat. If Yoko had freed John to experiment, he encouraged her to branch out with rock and roll. Her early songs were mostly improvised. Over the years, she has continued to experiment, inspired by kabuki music and freeform jazz. Her ragged vocals haven't always been pretty. But critics now say she opened doors for today's experimental new wave vocalists, like England's Lena Lovitch.
There is now a whole school of new wave rock vocalists who tell everybody how much they owe to those records of Yoko's. There's a more general influence, of course, which is as an experimenter, as an artist, and I think being a woman is particularly important here, because here was a woman who wasn't afraid to go where nobody, male or female, had gone before. She really wasn't afraid to do anything. If the piece involved screaming for hours, if it involved taking off all her clothes, whatever, she was willing to try it if there seemed to be a good artistic reason for it.
Lennon recorded Yoko for Apple Records and endorsed her publicly. Privately, it was a different matter. Nothing in John Lennon's background had prepared him for a relationship of equals.
Because I'm, quote, John Lennon, and also can be a problem to live with. Well, so can she, because we're both artists. But she tended to write when I was asleep, you know, or when I wasn't there, although I was sort of, you know, understanding and, yes, I'm with you all the way, but turned out just don't do it when I'm around. You know, I'm the writer, although I never expressed it in words. So she found herself, like a lot of women, which is doing things on the side, you know. And things like Winter Song, which I particularly liked, was written at dawn because the pig was asleep, and probably that was the only chance she got to do it.
I know you know, for 1,000 years, your body still feels nice and warm to me.
The fact that I'm portrayed as a very strong woman, yes, I have a strong nature too, but he almost encouraged that. For instance, when I go to a representative meeting, or say if I am with him but talking to other people, and these people are sort of being patronizing or in a very subtle way insulting you or something, most husbands will probably say, well, it's good that you were silent and, you know, didn't fight back. If he was the kind of person who said, oh, why don't you fight back? I mean, yes, it's good that you fought back.
Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be, let it be.
The Beatles first really became aware of Yoko at the Apple recording studios, where it became apparent that she and John had become absolutes in each other's lives. The romance was touching, but the Beatles were hardly enthralled. Girlfriends belonged in the playback booth, but there was Yoko insisting on space for her work right in their sacred arena. Lennon treated Yoko as if she were his partner, jamming with her between takes during the filming of Let It Be. At first, the rest of the band joined in for the Lennon's avant-garde musical experiments, though they found the music harsh and unmelodic. But musical differences weren't the only ones that were dividing the band. Let It Be would portray a group drifting toward chaos, its members at war over business and personal matters. Yoko's presence on the set only signaled the end of the brotherhood. And as their bond grew stronger, Lennon made his decision to cast his fate with Yoko.
I was always waiting for a reason to get out of the Beatles from way, way back then. I just didn't have the guts to do it because I didn't know where to go. I couldn't deal with not being continually on stage. And what Yoko did for me was liberate me from that situation. And that's how the Beatles ended. Not because Yoko split the Beatles, because Yoko showed me what it was to be Elvis Beatle and to be surrounded by sycophant slaves and people who are only interested in keeping the situation as it was. And therefore that's a kind of death.
An era had ended, and while it was John's decision to leave the Beatles, it was Yoko who took the blame. She became a magnet for the public's outrage, as story after story mocked her ideas, her influence over Lennon, and even her race.
It's such a sort of image of Oriental women. The image is either an obedient slave or dragon lady. Because I was almost talking at all, or talking equally with John or something, that really upset the world, How dare she, Isn't she supposed to be the Oriental slave, So now she's a dragon lady.
It wasn't just that people perceived that she broke up the Beatles. It was that the way that she did it. It was just like a black person not knowing his or her place. She was a woman that didn't know her place. She had a mind, she had opinions, she had artistic ideas, and she was never shy about stating them or expressing them. And I think that really got on people's nerves.
The problem in other people's eyes, I think, is that she's honest. The honesty is what hurts a lot of people, I think. We didn't know her too well, really, until quite recently, until maybe 80s, beginning of the 80s, when I just thought, well, maybe I've misunderstood. Maybe it's my mistake, not hers. So I telephoned her and started talking to her about just things generally. She said, "Why are you telephoning?" And I said, well, I think I've misunderstood you, and I think I've made a big mistake, and as you were John's wife, and I was very fond of John, I feel that he would have liked me to telephone you and kind of say hello and see what's going on. And she said, well, don't do me any favors, don't do it out of pity or don't sympathy. I don't want that, I don't want charity. Which at first I thought, but I had to say, no, she's right. She's right. I thought she was a hard woman. I don't think she is now. I think she's just the opposite. I think she's a very loving, caring woman. I thought she was pushy, which I think is wrong. I don't think she is. I think she's just herself. She's determined more than some other people to be herself. Some people will just give in, and she won't.
John and I were very lucky. We had money, we had each other, we had almost everything that most people dream about. Strangely enough, we did not think we were a success. What success means is to let your dream come true. And so in our case, our dream was